Now, me and you both know that truth is determined by this,
Amen.
by this. But the attack on truth is not only attack on Israel, it's an attack on using this as a truth filter. So what's happening now, and again, Israel, like in the Bible, is I'm going to say the lightning rod for everything that's happening. And what I'm trying to say is, if the truth about Israel can be so disassociated from the Bible, I mean, the truth about abortion can be disassociated, the truth about anything. And we're seeing that in a world where the media and what is truth and not truth is completely determined by something else. And look, they told us that all the Biden movies were a deep fake, and people buy into that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we saw them buy into it until there was no choice. It was kind of stuck in front of their faces. But I heard an interview with somebody who said the whole rape thing about Israel in the 7th of October, that they raped women, is fake. And somebody said, but wait a minute, they say they did it. They actually said in the manual that was a preparation, that's what you should do. They actually have admitted it in their own, and they actually have filmed it on their own. So you have all of this evidence, and still people don't say that is truth. Still people say, well, I heard a lot of people say that that's not true. And again, people determine truth by, I heard a lot of people who believe, or a lot of people believe that that's not true. And that's enough for everybody to say. So we're losing the propaganda war because we're losing the war on truth, because we're trying to explain that, this is right and this is wrong. People don't want to hear that. And Tom, you're dealing with that. Mm-hmm. People don't want to hear what's happening. They don't want to hear what's true and what's false. And the Bible told us that this is what's going to happen in end times. Yeah.
So it is a war that we are in. There's so many different areas where Israel is under attack. That's the reality of it. And this one is the truth war. Hey, welcome everybody to Hope for Our Times. For our midweek, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I have a special guest on because so many things that are happening we need to be updated on. And let me tell you, some real concerns. So please welcome David Tal. He is joining us today, former tank commander and major in the IDF. David, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for letting me kind of be a part of this. And it's a lot of things that we need to talk about today. A lot of things happening.
Yes, there are. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw all kinds of things out at you. David's with the Balagon Connection. You can see all the links for him in the description on here and how to get a hold of him directly. And also, I want to encourage you to like and subscribe to his YouTube channel too. Listen, it's a big deal. And also like and subscribe and share this one also. It's the only way that we can get the word out there. We really appreciate it and want to thank you ahead of time for doing that. Listen, share this with your friends. 1, 2, 3 friends, as many as you have.
Tom, just watching what happened with the debate and watching how the media treated Biden before the debate and after the debate, we're seeing that the regular mainstream media, you can't trust it. You can't trust what's going on. I mean, it's so blaringly clear how much the media was lying about Biden before. And I mean, how can anybody trust CNN the day after that?
Well, yeah, in fact, the day before the debate, I had a video that basically had CNN and all the mainstream media saying anything you see with Biden that looks like he's incompetent, those are all fake videos. Cheap fakes is what they were calling them. Well, right after the debate, since everybody watched it live, they completely dropped that, and now they're saying Biden needs to resign. And just so you know, everybody, we are recording this on Monday. You're watching it Wednesday. So in the hours between our recording and Wednesday, whatever's happened with Biden has happened. I'm going to guess that between now and Wednesday, David, Biden's gone. This is my guess. And he's already been replaced by someone, or their front runners in here, whoever it is.
Well, this is an interesting concept, Tom. Think about this. If this is Monday and we're going to be airing this on Wednesday, there are a lot of things that I think can change between Monday and Wednesday here. There's a lot of things that can change between Monday and Wednesday in Israel too, or in the Middle East, and maybe that contrast about what we think might be different on Wednesday would be very interesting to kind of put up because I think the Middle East is this close to an all-out different direction, and it might be this way and it might be that way. Maybe that's something we can get into.
Yeah, well, let's go. Let's just start there. Let's focus, first of all, on Israel, then Turkey and Russia. And with Israel, that's everything from Hamas to Hezbollah to the internal political situation, which is maybe the biggest problem out of everything. But let's take it from the top. So where do you want to start?
Let's start off with what is happening in Gaza right now.
Okay.
And what we understand right now is we're on the edge of finishing off the military operation in Gaza. I think Israel has realized that we're not going to wipe out, and nobody's talking about Sinwar anymore, getting Sinwar or pulling him out of his rabbit hole. So Israel is kind of saying, okay, the end of this is we have conquered Gaza. We have released as many hostages as we can. We have tried to reach a hostage agreement, but we can't because Hamas is not willing to step down from an all-out win in this war. Israel's not willing to step down, and I think somewhere next week, Israel's going to say we're stopping the fight, with Israel holding on to the Philadelphia corridor. If you want an explanation, that is the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt that we think is how Hamas is getting supplied from Egypt. Israel is going to hold a corridor down the middle of the Gaza Strip. There's actually splitting the Gaza Strip into two. And they're going to say, we're going to hold forces here, we're going to hold forces here, but the rest of Gaza, go back to what you want to do. And that's going to be the end of this situation. Basically, nobody won completely. Nobody lost completely. Israel's holding on to this situation. And then the question is going to be, okay, what's going to happen the day after? Who's going to come in? Who's going to rule Gaza? Who's going to be the administration? Who's going to be the Ministry of Rebuilding and whatever and whatever? And that's going to be a negotiation that's going to start probably about next week.
Wow.
So that's a weird situation because we haven't won completely. They haven't won completely, but the fighting is going to stop. We will still have hostages in there, which means Israel is saying we're going to feel free to go in and do whatever we need to do, wherever we need to do, when we need to do it. And that's going to be the interim situation. And that's going to be the situation until some kind of agreement is reached. And that is, I think, what we're going to see in Gaza in the next week or two.
Wow. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. And the thing is, that's the only thing that I see happening right now, where all the different forces, the Egyptians, the Americans, the Israelis, and even Hamas. Hamas can't really do anything about this. I mean, this is a situation. On the other hand, Israel can't finish them off completely. We're not going to see Sinwar hanging from the back of a truck somewhere. I mean, that's going to be the situation. And there's going to be this in-between situation where now the question is what's going to happen. And there's a lot of pressure being put on Israel to stop and move out. Israel's saying no. There's a lot of pressure being put on Hamas right now. I don't know if you know, but Kuwait is actually threatening to kick the Hamas out of not Kuwait, Qatar is actually threatening to kick Hamas out of Qatar and putting pressure on them. So the question is this, and that is more or less the situation. Israel, I think, the Israeli population has realized we're going to have to do this for years to come. I mean, this is not going to be over. The Israeli population is realizing that we cannot fence off the Gaza Strip and sit underneath our Iron Dome in peace and quiet, because it turns out that doesn't work. And that's what we talked about. I think the Iron Dome, I know it sounds weird to say it, but did as much damage as it actually protection. Okay. It's because I'm a tank commander, and there's always been a struggle between armor and weapons. I mean, you put on another layer of armor and the weapons get bigger. I mean, knights and I don't know if you remember what finished off knights and shining armor was gunpowder and guns. I mean, the minute you have a gun, armor is nothing. What finished off walls around cities was the technology of cannons and explosives. Okay, but then if you put more armor, you can defend. But in the end, somebody's going to find a way through your fortifications, through your armor, through your defense. The Iron Dome was a technological wall around the city. And we kind of thought that was going to save us from major attacks from the Hamas. The problem is that what the Hamas is saying, okay, if we can't shoot rockets, we'll just cross across the border. And I think Israel is sitting today and saying, and by the way, this will connect to the north, it says, we don't trust our fortifications. We don't trust our technology. We don't trust our ability to keep the enemy on the other side of the border peacefully. And what we need to do is change the want or the plan or the aspiration of the enemy to want to attack us like this. And I think that is where Israel is, both on the issue with Hamas and on the issue with Hezbollah. And that's going to be playing a major role in why Israel is going to go into Lebanon.
All right. Great. I'm going to ask you about this Lebanon issue in just a second, but I want to throw this out there so you can have it in your mind also. After this with Lebanon, and then later on we'll get into Russia and Turkey, and maybe the biggest problem is the internal problem with the government itself, which might be a much bigger deal than the external problem. So we have a lot to talk about, but I want you to have this in your head. I want to ask you about Gihon Springs in a minute, and just kind of explain what it is, how it came about, and then because it's absolutely fascinating, and what it is. So we're going to go there in a minute, but let's go to up north to Lebanon and Hezbollah first. The problem.
I want to start off with the beginning, and I don't know why nobody's saying this. I mean, since when does one country or since when does an organization on the other side of the border of a sovereign country have the right to indiscriminately fire into civilian populations for political reasons? I mean, I use examples in the United States. You got Canada and Mexico on both borders, but let's say a very pro-Palestinian element comes to power in Canada. I mean, parts of Canada are so Arab that you speak more Arabic than English, and they decide that they have a little enclave and they want to put pressure on the United States, and they start firing rockets from Ontario into downtown USA. And they're supporting Gaza, and they believe that it's justified. I mean, who accepts that? What world power would accept that? What world power, what country would accept that, let's say, not Mexico, but I don't know, drug cartels decide that they have a beef with the United States of America and they're trying to put pressure on America to keep its borders open, so they start firing rockets into downtown San Diego from Tijuana. It's not the Mexican government. It is somebody else who's got an agenda for anything. And you can't use your military power against this kind of threat because you can't wipe Tijuana off the map. You can't carpet bomb Ontario. You got to go in and figure out who are the ones that are actually doing this. But how would America react on this situation? How would any other country? And for some reason, it's acceptable practice for the Hezbollah to sit in the north on a war that they had nothing to do with. Lebanon had nothing to do with it. They had nothing to do with it, and use the southern part of Lebanon as a staging area to attack Israel indiscriminately. How did that become accepted practice? And there's something that nobody's actually answered to us. So, and then we don't want to pull off an all-out war. We're trying not to pull off an all-out war. And here's the thing. The poor people of Mexico or the poor people of Canada will say, we're not to blame. It's not us firing these missiles. I said, but the missiles are being fired out of your sovereign territory. Now, what should Israel do? And that's the situation we are in right now. And for some reason, the world accepts that people fire rockets into Israel indiscriminately. And nobody's asking, why is that even? I mean, we'll leave the war with Hamas and we'll talk about that. But why is it acceptable for a Shiite military fanatic organization that is designated a terror organization by the United States of America? Why is it considered acceptable that they fire rockets and the whole world is not up in arms against it?
Yeah.
And that's the situation we are in right now.
So yeah, you look at that, it's absolutely absurd. But not only that, what if in Canada they're launching rockets from a school where all the children are? You know, parents weren't allowed to take their kids out of school because the terror organization was keeping their kids there. Would the people of Canada even put up with that? You know, let alone the U.S. with the rockets landing in the U.S. Yet Israel is expected to just go along with these things, which is insane. And then also you have the evacuees up north, and the threats from Iran to escalate things, so there will be even more people that are evacuated. I mean, they're threatening Galilee, they're threatening everything. So, I mean, you guys, I look at this, Israel really, this northern problem is a much bigger problem than Hamas from my vantage point.
It is bigger. We're going to be finished with Hamas soon, with all the price and everything. But here's the problem. Israel is saying this is unacceptable. Every country in the world was saying this is unacceptable, okay? But what would happen, let's say, if in Canada a pro-Arab Palestinian functions takes up a piece of land and starts using Canada to attack, and if the United States says this is unacceptable, we're going to attack back, and then Iran says if you do that, we will see that as justification for us to declare all-out war on the United States, which is just not what happened. Israel is saying, we can't allow this to continue. We will go and attack Hezbollah. And Iran is saying, we will destroy Israel. We will wipe Israel on the map. They are actually publicly saying, we will try to the best of our ability to ethnically cleanse and genocide the Jewish people. They're saying it. They are saying it publicly. They said it in the United States. Nothing will be free, no rules of engagement, no rules of war, no rules. I mean, they're saying it. Why isn't the world holding them to account for it? And that's the situation that we're moving into. So if Israel does decide to pull out stops and say to the Hezbollah, we can't allow this anymore, Iran is threatening an all-out full-blown Middle East war with all of its proxies connected against Israel, and if America comes to that, against the United States. Now, that is what America doesn't want, meaning it's another Saddam Hussein kind of thing. I don't know if you remember. Saddam Hussein says, if you attack us, it's going to be the mother of all wars, blah, 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 blah. He talked very big, but, acted very small. But I think that's the situation we're in right now.
Okay. So when we look at this, the threats from Iran, and now we look at this Supreme Court ruling that happened here in the U.S. where basically it sounds like Trump can't be arrested. It is going to be a presidential race between Trump and whoever the Democrats install. And again, this is posting Wednesday. I'm assuming Biden has resigned. He's going to resign, even if he hasn't by the time this posts. He's going to, and that's going to put in either Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama, likely one of those two, into that position. Okay, so this being the case, who would Israel rather have? I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. I don't think we'd have a Ukraine issue right now. I don't think we'd have a China threatening the way they are. I certainly don't think we'd have the Russia-Turkey alliance forming like we are watching it. I don't think we'd see North Korea rising up like it is. And I absolutely do not think we'd have the Iran thing. I don't think we'd even would have Hamas. I'm firmly convinced that U.S. would have been absolutely behind Israel going into Gaza and dealing with that problem. So I think
Trump said it. Trump said it on the debate. He said it.
yeah,
He said,
and you know he means it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is so I look at this and go, I mean, it's very interesting. What's Iran going to do? Will they try to do something, assuming Trump might get elected, or do they just wait and kind of stand down for 4 or 5 more months and hope that they get Newsom or Obama?
So let's say me and you are sitting in Iran right now, and we're looking at what's going on. Okay, so here's the thing: we do want to spark the war between us and Israel, or we want to push, and I think, okay, let's back up a little bit. I'll go one layer underneath. Okay, one of the things that Israel is realizing that having military power, having technology, having the ability is not enough to defend your people from attack from outside. Okay, listen, we had the Iron Dome, but they still attacked us. We have much more military power than the Hezbollah, than the Hamas has, but still we're attacked. Because the problem in the world today, in a world where victimhood has become an asset, the ability to kill your enemy is not enough. You have to be capable to kill them, but also that killing your enemy will be morally justifiable by enough people. Otherwise, you get yourself in a problem. And we're seeing that with the Hamas, and we're seeing that with what's going on in the world today. And what's happening is enough people in the United States are saying, we don't want to get into a war in the Middle East. We don't care about what's going on to the Middle East. So if that's the situation, if different world powers are trying to stand down somebody who has technology, I mean, again, even if tomorrow somebody pulled off another 9/11, most of the people in the United States will say, well, we called for it. It's our fault. And that's ludicrous in my mind. Okay, if tomorrow another attack like 9/11 happens on American soil, half of the public in the United States will say it's because we supported Israel. So, I mean, we'll take that. And I think we're crazy. So what Israel is realizing is that even though we have the power, okay, we cannot use all of our military might. Even though we have the technology, the fact that it saves, I mean, think about this. They fired something like 9,000 rockets at us from Lebanon over the last couple of months. Only 20 Israelis have been injured, which is not a big number, meaning we have the defensive capability. We have the armor, okay, to defend our people. But they will continue, and that doesn't solve the political problem. And here's the thing. The difference between any kind of Democratic government or any kind of Trump government, because I don't know if he's a real Republican, I don't know what he is that Trump is saying, no, if I have the power, I will use it. Okay, the United States of America has the most powerful military in the world. It is the strongest economy in the world. What Trump has said, with all of his problems, is I have the military power, I have the economic power, I have this power, I will use it to what I think is beneficial for the people of the United States of America. What the Democrats are saying is that, well, even though we have the power, even though we have the military might, we're not going to use it because it's not nice. It doesn't support us. It doesn't look good. And that's the main difference. And I think Iran is sitting back and saying, wait a minute, that's the main difference. I mean, Trump will use America military power and economic power. What did Trump say in the debate? He said, I had Iran under control, not because I threatened them with military power, because I cut off their money. Mm-hmm. That's what he did. And we expect that if Trump is in office, he'll do the same thing. So it doesn't have to be, but Iran is freaked out about that. Biden, on the other hand, or whoever comes into power, probably will not. So they're sitting down and asking the same question that you were asking. Who's going to be the next president? If the next president is going to be Newsom, Biden, or Michelle Obama, that's good for Iran. It's better for them to wait until that happens. If the next president is going to be President Trump, They need to do whatever they want to do and get done now before the Trump administration comes to power. Mm-hmm. And everybody in the world is sitting exactly at that question that we're asking now, right now.
So my guess is Iran won't pull the trigger on anything real big, because if they do something really big against Israel, they attempt it, Israel's going to be able to fight. And I think Israel will be able to sustain itself and do well against the enemy, although the enemy may bring some great destruction. The problem, if Trump does win, and Iran, in my mind, Iran has to calculate this. If Trump does win, Iran's going to be in a lot more trouble come when he comes into power, if Iran does something an attempt that devastating against Israel now. So I'm looking at it going, it's a very interesting situation.
So Israel has an interest to keep this, and it's a kind of a Cold War. It's not an all-out war. We're not losing thousands of Israelis. Economically, it's a problem. But again, I live in Modi'in. My mom lives in Modi'in. We go to breakfast at the cafe, and Aroma, I think, has made a lot of money this year. I mean, everything's fine. But on the northern border, there is a problem. The thing is this. Israel wants to change that equation. Do we change that equation under this administration? Which means we press the button, we go to full out war. And the collateral damage, for instance, in Lebanon, because here's the thing, they're doing what the drug cartels in Mexico are doing. They're saying, we're not Mexico, we're something else. You can't, and the Mexican government is saying, don't attack us, attack the drug cartels. We're not the drug cartels. So by separating Hezbollah from Lebanon, we can't destroy Lebanese infrastructure. I mean, we can turn off the electricity in Lebanon, but that puts all of the Lebanese in jeopardy, and they're not Hezbollah. Do you understand the weird situation that we're in? So should Israel do this under a democratic administration in the United States, and the diplomatic fallout from that? Because we saw, I mean, even after we were attacked and 1,200 people were killed and women were raped, again, we're the bad guy again. Okay? So if we go on to Lebanon, we're going to be the bad guy anyway. Mm-hmm. All right. And in any case, do we prefer to be the bad guy under a democratic administration? So I'm going to say this. I think Israel's going to try to wait it out. Leave this situation as is until the elections. Mm-hmm. And then we'll see if we go to a full out attack. On the other hand, I don't think Iran wants to wait it out, because they got nothing to win for waiting it out. I mean, this is the best situation that they're going to get, a totally dysfunctional American administration in power right now, okay? And they have nothing to achieve from the result of the elections. If it's Trump, they lose. And even if it's another Democratic power, Newsom or Michelle Obama, they're in the same place that they are with the Biden zombie in power. So I believe that Israel's going to try to keep a lid on it until the election, and that Iran is going to try to explode it or blow it up before the election. And that's the situation I think that we're in right now.
Okay. So let me ask you, I got to ask you about the internal problem, which from some of the things you've shared with me is a much bigger threat than some of the things from the outside. But before we go there, because I think you can explain things that nobody else here in the U.S. gets, whether you're on the right or left, you're not getting it. And when you explained it to me, I thought, we aren't hearing this from anyone. We aren't hearing it from news. We aren't hearing it from prophecy teachers. I'm not hearing it from other people in Israel. So your explanation, it just really helps us to understand there's a much bigger problem, a much bigger threat against the nation of Israel than anyone realizes. And I would say Israel is under attack from this, which is much worse than the enemy they can see on the outside that's out there. Okay, but before I ask you that, let me ask you about Gihon Springs. You're involved with Gihon Springs. You're going to be speaking at a conference in November in Southern California. I'm excited about that. But with Gihon Springs, and it's going to be a benefit conference actually for Gihon Springs. But with that, David, can you just run down, what is Gihon Springs and why are you involved with Gihon Springs too?
Well, the basic idea behind Gihon Springs is that I think it was Paul who went back to Jerusalem and he took funds from the people, from the believers in Macedonia and Achaia. I think it was in First John, in John, I think. And actually, he says Gentiles have plugged into the Jewish spiritual heritage. They owe the believers in Jerusalem, they owe the Christians in Jerusalem their support. And what Gihon Springs does, basically, it is was created by Jeff and Karen Johnson. Jeff Johnson was the pastor of Calvary Chapel Downey until a year and a half ago, and he passed away a couple of months ago. But basically, Jeff, who sat at the knees of Chuck Smith, basically said we have to support Israel. So when he stepped down from being a pastor, he created a ministry whose job is to help and support the believers in Israel, not all of Israel, not the rest of Israel, also, but also more than anything, the believing, the messianic movement in Israel. It's called Gihon Springs because that's the spring of water that bubbles out from underneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and supplies water to Israel. And what we do is we take resources from Christians and organizations on this side, and we actually supply resources for messianic Christian believing elements inside Israel to help bring them up. And that is, in a weird way, directly connected to something that I find deeply on my heart. I'm connected to that because I'm married to Jeff Johnson's daughter. And we've decided that our job is to be part of this ministry. But I'm going to say that last time I was in Israel, seeing Christian love in Israel, meaning Christians who say we support Israel because we're Christians, has opened the hearts of Israelis and Jews to the name of Jesus in a way that I've never seen before. Meaning Gihon Springs is not only helping the ministries in Israel, it is showing Christian love to those who are not Christian in Israel, the Jews, who have a bad experience with Christianity. And that has opened up an evangelical door like I've never seen before. Now, I know we have a tendency to say, okay, let's go hand out Bibles on the beach in Tel Aviv, which is fine. And I know there are people who are doing this. But I would say, let's go to Tel Aviv and help and support the Jews, the Israelis in Tel Aviv. And when they ask us why we're doing this, we say we do this in the name of Jesus. That is as important as handing out Bibles on the beach in Tel Aviv. And that's what Gihon Spring does.
And by the way, the passage where Paul wrote that, it's 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1 through 4, everybody. So you can check it out there. But there's even more to this. So it's also the other thing that through Gihon Springs is support of the soldiers. Yeah. There's equipment that's needed. There's various things that are needed. And everybody can check out that link too, along with the Balagon Connection, Gihon Springs, in the description, and see the various ways to just help. But you have the personal connection because your brother Joel also began, his ministry too, which is it's all connected. Can you explain that? Because to me, this is one of the most powerful things. Is the most necessary thing is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And can you?
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, if you can explain this to help, this will help people to really connect. And then we're going to get into the biggest threat against Israel right after your explanation here. Okay,
so the main issue is this: growing up as a Christian in Israel was not easy. I mean, we call ourselves believers because we don't even want to call ourselves Christians. I'm talking about Jewish followers of Christ in Israel. And again, because of the bad rep, it was kind of hard. But I grew up as a Christian in Israel. But I walked away when I was 18. In Israel, everybody goes into the military at the age of 18, men and women. And there's a process, or there's a dynamic that's similar to what happens to you guys when Christian kids go to college. You're out of the greenhouse, you're out of the secure spiritual environment. And a lot of Christians step away from their faith at that point. A lot of Israeli Christians step away from their faith at the age of 18 because you're out on your own. And I stepped away at the age of 18. And it turns out that a lot of people did. My younger brother Joel watched this happen. He watched his older brother. He's about 7 years younger than I am. And to make the long story short, he says, we need to do something that trains young Israelis before they go into the army to strengthen their faith and keep them connected to their faith while they go through the 3 years of military service. And he put together an organization called the Ways of God, Netivah, which basically disciples young Israelis before they go into the army. By the way, I don't know how to say this, but the churches in the States should do something similar. Discipleship about dealing with fear, about defending your faith, about morality and sexuality in a non-Christian world, about drugs and this and all of that. And he prepares them before they go into the army. And as a result of that, more of them stay connected to the faith over those 3 years and become a witness. And me and Christy were in Israel, and you come to a Christian youth conference, meaning young, well, not teenagers, but army age. I mean, we were at an army age conference of Israeli believers where I'd say probably a quarter of them were walking around with assault rifles on their backs. And they sit down in a hall and they put their assault rifle on the floor and they praise Jesus in Hebrew.
Wow.
I mean, just saying that
Wow.
is amazing. And that is somebody who's making a difference. And that's one of the things that Gihon Springs does. We're supporting that ministry with as much resources as we can. That's kind of amazing.
It really is remarkable when I think of some of the things you've told me about it in the past, and now with October 7,
Yeah.
you have these soldiers that are prepared, young men and young women, with the gospel of Jesus Christ. These are messianic believers who are now there in the foxholes, on the front lines with others, and they have the light of Jesus as other people have the questions about life and faced with the reality of the war and everything. And here, as God has raised them up, even through your brother Joel, for such a time as this, to me, is the most remarkable thing. And like you said, this has been going on for what, 20 years? Your brother's been doing this?
No, the ministry's been going on about 12 years now.
12 years, so 12 years of that, wow.
Well, part of what it does, by the way, now that these kids, well, I call them kids, but not only kids, are actually soldiers in the front line. Now they're actually having a conference. They had a conference this weekend where they support the kids that aren't in the war.
Wow.
And that means spiritual support for what you've gone through during this battle. I mean, and these are combat veterans in your term. Okay. And this is a Christian ministry that supports Israeli Christian combat veterans. I mean, it's amazing. And Joel didn't think it would be that. We didn't think it would be that. But now he's got these generations of soldiers that he is ministering to while this war is going on.
It's just, that's just remarkable. And praise the Lord.
I mean, we need more of that. And that's what Gihon Springs is doing. We're thinking about branching off into women's ministry in Israel. It's something that we don't have enough of. Support for mothers and wives of soldiers that are in the combat zones. Nobody's dealing with that. That's something that we want to kind of step into a little bit more. So yes, so this is, again, bringing Christian support, love to the people in Israel. And here's the weird thing. We're supporting the Jews, the Messianic believers, we're supporting the Christians. But when the Jews who are not Christians see this, okay, they see the equipment that we're bringing to some of the units, and they ask this Messianic kid who's sitting in the bunk next to him or on the tank next to him, and he's saying, okay, what are these Christians doing here? And he gets to share Jesus to Jews.
That's so cool. Wow.
That in itself, I think, is worth everything. And I'm going to tell you, being an evangelical in Israel has been very hard. And these are doors that have never been opened before. And that's what Gihon Springs is doing. So, I mean, connect to us, connect to the link. There's going to be conferences, and me and Christy go back to Israel and kind of find where we want to designate, where we want to plant those seeds as much as possible. And so I'll be putting up interview with Joel somewhere this week from the last conference in Nativa. And I mean, I'm just walking around there with a lot of pride for my little brother and a lot of thanks for the grace of God that this is happening among the believers today.
Amen. And that interview with your brother Joel, that'll be on the Balagan Connection, correct?
That'll be on the Balagan Connection.
Great. And all this started because you walked away from the teaching of Jesus being the Messiah, and then you look now, everything coming full circle, and now you're out proclaiming Jesus as Messiah. This is just really remarkable. Okay, yeah. David, let me ask you about this. We're going to switch gears and get to the real big challenge.
Balagan.
The real big Balagan. By the way, everybody, David, real quick, for people who don't know yet, what does Balagan mean?
It is a connected term. We use it in Hebrew, but it originally is in Persian and Russian and Yiddish, means everything that's a mix-up, a mess-up, something that's not going according to plan. That debate was a big balagan.
That was a balagan. And what's happening right now in the midst of Israel is...
And what's happening in Israel.
Big balagan.
Means,
one second. While you explain it, I want you to point out what's over your right shoulder. Is your tank underneath the Israeli flag.
Ah, that one?
Yeah, and I'm going to let you, that's your tank that you were.
Well, listen, I went into the military at the age of 18 and got kicked out of the Air Force because I'm not good enough to be a pilot, and ended up commanding one tank, and then commanding a platoon of tanks, and then commanding a company of tanks. So for 6 years in regular service and then 30 years in reserve, I commanded a tank company. And about, almost 10 years now, they took my company away from me and gave it to somebody younger and more handsome than I am. But that is my tank right there. And that is me sticking my head up to the top. For those of you who understand tanks, that's an upgraded Patton on an older tank that kind of I commanded. Now they have these new Merkavas in downtown Gaza, which are much more fun than that. But I keep this up here because I miss my tanks. Yeah. And I'm going to say something else maybe that connects to what we were talking about. Okay. For 30 years, I defended my country from the back of a tank. I was in Lebanon. I was in Gaza. I was in the West Bank. I was in the Sinai. I mean, that had been my job. God decided that I'm too old and too heavy to climb up into a tank. So I'm now defending my country like this, from the back of a TV screen or a monitor, and not from the back of a tank. But I'm going to say this: the attack on Israel on this platform is as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than the attack on Israel that you need a tank to defend from.
So let's hear about this, because I'm going, we have the propaganda war, which is huge. We look at all the anti-Semitism, and I see it everywhere. I see it on the left, I see it on the right. I guarantee you the comments will be, even from this, there's going to be a lot of anti-Semitic comments. But let's get to the problem. The biggest threat with Israel is what's happening on the inside.
For better or for worse, Israel is what we call a parliamentary democracy, meaning we don't have a two-party system. And there's a lot of people in the United States who are thinking, wait a minute, that might be a problem too, but okay. But we have a multi-party system where we select or we vote for parties. The party that makes the most, gets the most votes has to create a coalition with other parties in order to be the government of the country. For many years, Benjamin Netanyahu has been the head of the biggest party, and they have, except for one occasion, have been the government creating majority, I think, for almost 12 years. Benjamin Netanyahu has been in government for 10 years, 12 years, with a gap in the middle. But because of that, the power or the authority of the administration is actually hinged on the other parties supporting him and his government from the sides. And Benjamin Netanyahu is losing the support of the other elements that were part of his government. So we also don't separate church and state or synagogue and state. So we have religious parties that are part of the government. So the religious parties are giving the support to Benjamin Netanyahu hinged on economic support for religious institutions in Israel, to make a long story short. So his government is being supported very precariously by Orthodox religious and nationalistic religious elements. There's a growing number of people who see him as corrupt. There's a growing number of Israelis who want him to reach an agreement with the Palestinians to release the hostages and end the war. And his government is on the edge of falling over, which would bring on a election cycle in this situation more than anything. And I'm going to say this. I think Iran is trying more than anything to push Israel into that kind of dynamic. Now, that is very, very dangerous. Think about us going through an election cycle in this war that we're fighting right now, which means in our political system, the politicians or the political system has jurisdiction over the military system. And one of the things that are very critical is the country supporting the decisions of the political system and telling the army what to do. So, I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is telling the army, finish off the issue in Gaza or start the war in the north. But if he doesn't have the backing of the people behind them, then those kind of decisions become political decisions and not, how do you say, not security decisions more than anything. Okay. And I think that is a growing problem with what's going on right now.
So if Netanyahu is removed from office, what do you see as being the future for Israel?
Well, we do have a very robust democratic system. I mean, there would be elections. The elections would bring up another coalition. According to the polls today, Benjamin Netanyahu would not survive. The Likud party would not survive a new election. So it would probably be a coalition with Benjamin Netanyahu is what we would call in American terms center-right. Okay, we have a couple of centralistic parties, and we have a couple of central left parties, and then we have the religious parties as a different designation. We see most of us see some kind of center and center left coalition coming to power, which would leave the religious out of this and would be more, tilted to finishing off the situation with Lebanon and with Gaza and reaching some kind of durable kind of agreement that would last into the future. Meaning the center left in Israel's politics is less militaristic, meaning let's reach an agreement. We have to come from strength, but let's reach an agreement. There's a large element in Israeli politics who wants to reach an agreement with Hamas about the hostages. Just say yes to everything that Hamas wants, just bring the hostages home. And Benjamin Netanyahu has been putting that off to a certain extent. So all of that would come to head. But again, I don't think that's going to play a role because even if we have elections tomorrow, it'll be 3 months until we have another political situation actually in power.
Okay. And you see the internal struggle as a bigger threat against Israel than the external.
Well, I taught a sermon on Sunday about the fact that the enemy actually identified 4 weaknesses in Israel which brought them to the conclusion that they could attack Israel. And I'm saying the enemy, I'm saying Iran, I'm saying Hezbollah, I'm saying everybody else. But I'm going to say even this. I mean, even the enemies of the United States are looking for the lack or for a gap in these four elements. The first one is unity. And a country who is not united cannot make decisions, and sometimes, in some cases, hard decisions about what needs to be done. The second was awareness. I think that Israel was not aware of what was going on around it, and as a result of that, the enemy realized that we're not aware, and they could kind of trick us and pull the wool over our eyes. The third is what I would call, in biblical terms, possession or ownership. We were not possessing and owning what God had given to us in this country. And the fourth is really interesting, and if we want to go into that, that's really interesting, is what I would call peace. Now, peace in Hebrew, the word shalom, means a lot more than just the peace that you call. It also means wholeness. It also means being paid for. It also means the last word that Jesus said on the cross in Aramaic before he died. The last word that he said is nishlam. Now, the word in Hebrew, nishlam, means it is paid in full, or it is whole, or it is peace. All of those together. And I think that's one of the main weaknesses, that we don't have enough of that in our society. But I think the United States, if I use Israel as a canary in the coal mine, the United States is lacking on all of those four fronts. No unity, no awareness, no possessiveness. I mean, look at what you're doing on your borders. I mean, and everything, and no peace.
I would say that is absolutely right. When I look at Israel itself, America has some very serious problems. And you look at Israel itself, do you think Israel is getting to a place where the majority of people are going to want peace at any cost and could end up in a bad agreement? I know biblically, we know eventually that's going to happen, but do you see that building that way?
Yeah, I see a direction going in that way. And again, depending on what's going to happen in the north, okay, I can see Israel saying, okay, let's reach an agreement. By the way, I can see the United States of America doing the same way. There's a lot of people in the United States of America say, let's pay the Iranians. I mean, we had an administration that was paying the Iranians not to attack American assets. I mean, that's a way to do it also. And then that's a way to put it together. So I think about Michelle Obama kind of an administration where Iran says, if you don't pay us, we are going to start blowing up things on the Suez Canal. Or we're going to start blowing up things in the Straits of Hormuz. I don't see a Democratic administration in the United States standing up to that. And again, this is the situation I think we're in. And again, we're a microcosmos of what's going to be happening here. And look at what's happening to Israel. And hopefully I can say to the American people, learn the lessons.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem like the American people are learning the lessons. And I look at what's happening on our borders, and the internal issues that we have are absolutely enormous. And the media is against anything that is sensible here. And I think the media here is also against Israel. I don't see going back to the propaganda war. You guys have all these different fronts. You have the internal one. I mean, I want to get to the propaganda thing in a minute, but let me ask you this before we even get there. What about Judea and Samaria? What the world calls the West Bank? Are there internal problems there with sleeper cells or whatever you would call them?
Well, surprisingly, no. Surprisingly, if I look out from the borders of Israel to the Middle East, okay, I see more positiveness in the moderate Muslim Arab world than I see anywhere in the West. I mean, think of this. Everybody says Saudi Arabia, but Jordan is freaked out. Iran, it turns out that they found an arms cache of Iranian arms in Amman, in the outskirts, in the suburb of Amman. I don't know if you know, but something like 70% of the population of the Hashemite kingdom of Transjordan are people from Palestinian descent.
Mhm.
Okay. Jordan is freaked out, and Iran is threatening Jordan. If you are part of this war against us, we will raise up the fundamental militaristic, jihadi, Islamic elements inside Jordan, and we will be a threat to Jordan's power. By the way, they're saying the same thing to Saudi Arabia. So, what I'm trying to say is, I see more positiveness, and then this is how we get to the West Bank. Even in the moderate Arabs in the West Bank has not risen up against Israel. We don't see big demonstrations. We don't see another intifada in the West Bank, because I think the West Bank has realized that it's better to be with Israel than against Israel in this. And so the moderate Arab world is seeing how the Muslim fundamentalists is scaring everybody and pulling this off. They're all freaked out of it. I mean, the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, for instance, the last thing they want is a pro-Hamas government. Now, that being said, a lot of the people are Hamasniks. And if there was an election, a democratic election in the West Bank tomorrow, Hamas would come to democratic power, because a lot of Arabs see, even if they don't agree with militant Islam, that Islam is standing up to the Western world and they want to be a part of that. But on the whole, as of now, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, the Palestinians in the West Bank are actually waiting to see what's going to happen. If Hamas wins, we're going to see a destabilization of the whole Middle East. I mean, we're going to see a destabilization of Egypt. Egypt is freaked out. Why doesn't Egypt open up its borders and let the Palestinians in? They're freaked out about Palestinian influence. Why doesn't Jordan take Palestinians in? They're freaked out about Palestinian influence. Why doesn't Saudi Arabia, who has tents for 10 million people that come on the jihad every year, doesn't open up its borders? By the way, the tents are air conditioned. Doesn't open up its borders. Why do none of them do that? They're freaked out. So I get more support from Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia for what's going on in Israel than I get from the Biden administration. And that is absurd.
That is absurd. That is absurd. This is going to take us to this last thing I got to ask you about. And again, everybody, if you would make sure you follow David at the Balagon Connection, and with his YouTube, also with his brother Joel, that's going to post this week. You got to check it out. And a reminder here, like, subscribe, and share. Listen, again, I want to thank you for doing it. It's absolutely free to do that, but it's the only way we can get the word out, and we really do appreciate your help, because
Can I say something on that one?
Please do.
In a world where truth is decided by likes, meaning people don't know what's true or false anymore, they look and see how many likes. We need your help to like the truth and spread the truth. This is how truth is spread today in the world that we live in, where algorithms decide what is true and what is not. And I think that's important for people to understand that their way to spread the truth is by subscribing, liking, and sharing the truthful elements in order to oppose the other side.
Very well said, and that's absolutely true. Thank you, David. So necessary, and again, for both of our YouTube channels, we would really appreciate it, and it's necessary. It's just absolutely necessary. Okay, let me ask you this: the propaganda war. We got the whole party here. I don't see anybody coming in from the Democrat side following Biden that would be favorable to Israel. So, and you have the whole Western media, and we're also watching this issue not just on the left anymore, but we also see it coming from the right here in America. I mean, I can go to all kinds of media accounts that aren't mainstream media that are on the right that are now attacking Israel, not just the nation of Israel, but also they're very anti-Jew.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to say Candace Owens? Do we want to say Tucker Carlson?
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to say Tucker Carlson bringing a minister from, I think, Bethlehem, who talked about how terrible Israel is for 40 minutes and did not mention terror, did not mention Islam, and did not mention anything like that, only blamed Israel, and almost said that Jesus was a Palestinian.
Yeah, which I hear all the time, by the way, which I'll do a message on that sometime in not too distant future.
Which is, I mean, absurd. Sorry, I can't. And so, again, truth, right and wrong are being determined by a different sensibility than the Bible that me and you hold dear. And I think people don't understand that as much as anything else, the attack on Israel is not only an attack on my people, it's not only an attack on whatever the Israeli government does or doesn't do in Israel. It's an attack on the concept of truth. And the accessibility, the acceptability. People accept that if I have 1,000 people in a demonstration yelling from the river to the sea, the fact that that is happening is enough truth for me. I don't need to know what river and what sea. And we're living in a mindset where that is what has become acceptable. The fact that there are other people, I look to the left on my media screen and I look to the right on my media screen and I see more people with me, that's enough for me to determine what is truth. Now, me and you both know that truth is determined by this.
Amen.
By this. But the attack on truth is not only an attack on Israel, it's an attack on using this as a truth filter. So what's happening now, and again, Israel, like in the Bible, is I'm going to say the lightning rod for everything that's happening. And what I'm trying to say is, if the truth about Israel can be so disassociated from the Bible, I mean, the truth about abortion can be disassociated, the truth about anything. And we're seeing that in a world where the media and what is truth and not truth is completely determined by something else. And look, they told us that all the Biden movies were a deep fake, and people buy into that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we saw them buy into it until there was no choice. It was kind of stuck in front of their faces. But I heard an interview with somebody who said the whole rape thing about Israel in the 7th of October, that they raped women, is fake. And somebody said, but wait a minute, they say they did it. They actually said in the manual that was a preparation, that's what you should do. They actually have admitted it in their own, and they actually have filmed it on their own. So you have all of this evidence, and still people don't say that is truth. Still people say, well, I heard a lot of people say that that's not true. And again, people determine truth by, I heard a lot of people who believe, or a lot of people believe that that's not true. And that's enough for everybody to say. So we're losing the propaganda war because we're losing the war on truth, because we're trying to explain that, this is right and this is wrong. People don't want to hear that. And Tom, you're dealing with that. Mm-hmm. People don't want to hear what's happening. They don't want to hear what's true and what's false. And the Bible told us that this is what's going to happen in end times. Yeah.
So it is a war that we are in. There's so many different areas where Israel is under attack. That's the reality of it. And this one is the truth war. And again, everybody, I just want to remind you what David said. We can do our part. David and I, we each have we have our channels, but for you guys, it involves you to like and subscribe and share. It's free to do those things.
I like to say to people, the media highway is a two-way street. I mean, you don't always have to accept what, you can push back, and we can push out our narrative just like the enemy can push out his narrative. But one of the things I need people to understand is that in the issue of truth, it's not a democracy, meaning the majority doesn't decide what's true and what's false. If there's anything that you and I have learned from the Bible, is that sometimes, or in most times, in fact, in the basis of us, the majority is wrong. We need God to correct the majority. The classic example that I give is that when 12 spies went to tour the land, decide whether this is a good land for us to be a part of. Out of the 12, 10 came back and said, no, we don't do this. And two spoke the truth. And if we had gone by what the majority had said, we wouldn't be here today. God's plan would have been broken before we entered the promised land. We would not have had the promised land. It would not have kept the promise. It was the minority that kept us on the promised path. So people need to understand that truth is not divided or not decided by majority. Again, I live in a democratic nation. I understand that. But that doesn't mean that the majority is always right. And if you are a born-again Christian, you have to know that what's right and what's wrong is not decided by how many likes somebody has. People very evil have a lot of likes, and we're seeing more in this. Have you seen the new Star Wars series?
I have not. Well, fill me in. Fill us in.
Disney and Star Wars have turned into an occult. Basically, a planet of witches, okay, are changing the Force to something else, and witches are having babies without men, and it's turned into a whole different dynamic, and they're putting that on children's Disney TV, and I'm saying, come on, the fact that there's a lot of people who watch it, does that mean that's the truth? I mean, yeah. We're out there.
We absolutely, and we need to. We're supposed to be light, salt and light, and we need to go forward. And we do have His Word. And David, so thankful for you and your ministry and just some of these things. I can't wait to have you back on to update us. I know there's a lot more that we could talk about. The rising threat of terror that is coming in Europe. Rising threat of terror that's coming right here in the United States. We could go on and on for hours, but we'll get into it more next time too. Another update from Israel.
Tom, I want to say thank you too, because, and maybe what happened to me on the 7th of October and what happened afterward, okay, basically, where you feel the rug being pulled out from under your feet. I was in the military for years. I didn't believe in my wildest dream that the enemy could pull off something like that. I was in the intelligence arena for quite a few years. I couldn't believe in the wildest dreams that the enemy can pull off that kind of cool. You lose all security in the, how do you say, the armor and the secure and the fences and the strengths that you think you had. And at some point you have to say, I don't have the strength. I don't have that security. And the only way to have hope is looking towards Him and looking towards what the Bible says. And what I'm trying to say, to a certain extent, in a wider way, thank you. Because you are bringing hope for our times. Because if anybody Christian looks at what's going on, there's no hope. And what we do need is hope. What my people right now need is hope, by the way. And I don't know how to say. Think about what all of this looks like from inside Israel. Without God, everything's down the drain. Look at the United States of America. Without God, what hope do we have? And I want to say thank you for being a hope for our times for quite a few people.
Amen. So true. Without God, we have no hope, and we can see which way all of this is going. David, thank you again for joining me. It's just been great. You're such a blessing. You're in our prayers. Looking forward to the conference coming up in California in November. We'll keep you guys all posted. Registration will start soon enough, but that's going to be a conference to support Gihon Springs. So we're really looking forward to it.
I want to stress that it's not only a conference. I'm trying to get Israeli media, the Israeli government connected to this conference, because what is important for me is to explain Israel to the people here, but to show Israelis that people here want to hear about Israel.
Amen.
That is, I think, part of what this conference is supposed to do is look at us. We're here saying we support you, Israel.
Amen. It's going to be great. Absolutely terrific. Thank you, David, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope you appreciated this special edition for our midweek update. And also, I want to encourage you to send this to all your friends. God bless you, everybody. And we will see you. May you here in America have a blessed 4th of July. See you guys. See you guys Sunday morning, Sunday night. Bye.
See you soon.